dealing with the chat function. All familiar? Okay, no specific questions. Help for SMEs. Yeah, hopefully we'll be giving you some very good tips for that. So we're here for maximum engagement. Given the small numbers, you can switch your videos on. If not, if you don't feel comfortable, then leave them off. Imagine we're sitting around a big virtual table and we're discussing the topic at hand. So it's free form with a little bit of structure, but other than that, we want it to be a great and productive discussion as one chamber. With housekeeping out of the way, I'm just going to hand over to Ross, CEO and Executive Chair of the Hampshire Chamber of Commerce, to formally open the session. Over to you, Ross.
Thanks so much, Rob. Welcome, everybody. Great to see a good turnout this morning. Certainly, there's no doubt that clean growth and sustainability is at the top of the agenda, with sort of a few short time to COP26 and an awful lot of coverage taking place globally. There's no surprise there, but certainly for small businesses, it remains an issue and something which they're all trying to grapple with. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we know that our role is significant in this. But it is still, there is some confusion still out there. I mean, I was looking at, it's a slight cliche, but I was looking at all the different words that cover the topic of sustainability. And I have it on good authority that there's sort of 500 phrases. Well, the phrases will certainly get you through the door, but they won't necessarily help you with your business. So whether you come in through the door under green or sustainability or indeed climate change, or you're looking at clean growth, or whether it's about biodiversity or conservation, or whether it's about ethical considerations, ethical consumers and triple bottom line, whatever the access point for you as a business, you really do want to know what is it you can specifically do, what you can do practically for your business. So in a way, it's a very broad topic, but it's also a very narrow goal. And certainly there's a very narrow window for us to act. I mean, I believe that net zero is all of our responsibility. It's one of the few collective things. We're a generation that's being asked to address this matter, much as generations in the past have been asked and have stood up and come forward and addressed other key considerations. And it really does fall to us. Now, I know as a business, it's not the only game in town, but it is probably the only game changer in town. That's the last time I'm going to crack that very bad joke. But it is probably true that the biggest impact you can make as a business broadly to the economy and to society is to ensure that you address. So what do you do? How do you do it? You know, what are your specific challenges? We want to hear from you today as much as we want to hear from the panel. It's vitally important that we all contribute and that we all come together and really share this thinking. We have a Green Innovation Steering Group, and we would welcome, if you're not already involved in it, to get involved in it, because this is how we learn what businesses need to do and how they can approach the challenges that they have. That's pretty much all for me. I'm going to very much be listening and learning today. I may be doing a few messages in the background, but that's fundamentally it. What I want to do is thank Rob and Mission Performance for their support, ongoing support, and also thank Fareham Borough Council, who's helped also today. Encourage you to get involved in our Green Innovation Group and welcome you, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Rob.
Thank you, Ross. We've got a few introductions now. First one from me, Rob Lewis from Mission Performance Limited. We've been going for about 2 decades now, based in Leon-Solent, near Daedalus Airfield. A couple of friendly faces. My old bank manager is on the call. Mairead, welcome, nice to see you. And Simon, good to see some friendly faces. Mission Performance, we exist to improve the standards of leadership, teamwork, and communication for wider societal environmental good, and we deliver that with by sparking and supporting long-term behaviour change. We've got high quality training and coaching programs across all delivery formats, and we deliver that globally for a whole range of large and small clients. Enough about me. We've assembled a really talented panel for you this morning. We'll have a few introductions from them, and then we'll open the floor for discussion, with the focus very much on the practical and the pragmatic set against the wider understanding of this broad and complex topic. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Diego. Diego, the floor is yours, sir, for an introduction.
Right. Thank you very much. So I will share my screen. Hopefully it's right. Okay. So I'm Diego Vázquez Bruce. I'm from the University of Portsmouth, the Faculty of Business and Law, and my area is strategy, innovation, and enterprise. So I wanted to introduce some of the challenges that we face when we discuss about clean growth, sustainability, and innovation, some of which were already highlighted by Ross. And I think the first starting point is innovation. That's one of the drivers and one of the ways that we need to get the radical transformations. But innovation failure in general is very high. 75% of new products fail. And it is that failure can be even higher when we are talking about green products. So recent research shows that a new product and service performance, particularly when relates to green products, depends on the companies correctly interpreting and responding to the expectation of stakeholders regarding explicit environmental expectations, for instance, biodiversity, climate change, or plastic, but social expectations. Because when you become a sustainable brand, you are held to higher standards. So society will expect you not only to be green, but also to be socially responsible. And the failures of companies who have social issues, for instance, with diversity or with inclusion, and brand themselves as green, affect the brand more than they will affect a normal brand. So this idea that equitable sustainability that integrates the social concerns is key for sustainable brands and also for empowering your teams. Teams are empowered or motivated by green issues, but also when they see a social impact. So the second point I wanted to highlight is that the role of research, and that at the point when there is a lot of demand for sustainability solutions from the part of academics, the field of sustainability is more fragmented than ever. So there is more and more differences among scholars on how to address sustainability problems. So how to build this bridge between talking about sustainability and walking about sustainability in an innovative way. And in that sense, what academics investigate is increasingly separated for what policymakers or company needs. I think most of you will know what is the triple bottom line, this idea at the top of the slide of people, planet, and prosperity that should be in balance, which was introduced by John Elkington. So, but Elkington himself has recently asked for the triple bottom line to be recalled, because he said that it's not achieving what is meant to achieve. So radical transformation for companies to work only in the intersection of the 3P. Instead, it's being used to compensate and to have some environmental issues or have social issues to compensate for the lack of responsibility in other areas. So one of the challenges for research is to develop new frameworks that have a better way to integrate social and environmental issues. So the implication is that sustainability has to be more local and has to improve the fabric of the society where we live. And that means that there are a lot of gaps that we have to work together as society, companies, and academics So what is called an actionability gap. So how to give agile response to the needs of implementation of clean growth or sustainable practices as they emerge, how to put together social and technical innovations, how to provide the new skills that are needed. So there is, the Global Compact has recently emphasized how employees and big companies are looking for employees and suppliers who have a different type of skill set needed for sustainability. Not only about cognition, so knowledge, but also about creativity, social, emotional, and physical skills. Those skills that can use to have what is called a sustainability mindset. And there is a gap in terms of universities in providing those skills and in providing research that integrates all those concepts. And I think that's all for my 5 minutes. We can come back to some of the topics, hopefully, in the conversation.
Thank you, Diego. We had a couple of questions before the session talking about the link between research and good practice. So perhaps we can pick up on some of those themes as we get through into the discussion proper. So thank you, Diego. Catherine, floor's yours.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Catherine Byam. I'm the founder and CEO of DeepL Consulting. It stands for Digitally Enabling People. And I work at the cross-section of sustainability, digital transformation, and people. And I think that there's a lot of intersectionality in going through this whole sustainability topic. As Diego was just explaining, there are so many things that overlap, and there's so many things that we need to get more comfortable with. One of the things is innovation failure. I mean, we have to fail in order to get things right at some point. So we need to have a culture that embraces failure as well. And that's not easy to do when your bottom line depends on it. And when we talk about the triple bottom line as well, it's quite a challenge. Even the triple bottom line is a challenge. To think of a model that's different from that is even more of a challenge. And I think that SMEs today are looking for practical solutions to take action. So this is going to be interesting as a topic of discussion today, and I look forward to you guys generating your own input as well. I also run a podcast called Where Ideas Launch, where I talk at length about these topics with a number of experts as well. So one of the points that I wanted to raise is that for SMEs today, you're probably struggling with a couple of things that are high on the agenda. One is rising costs and the cost of procuring services and energy, which Mark will talk about, I'm sure. Talent attraction, so both attracting the right talent and retaining the right talent, and being able to develop those skills and then retain those skills once developed, because at the moment we're all being crowded out by the bigger consultancy firms or the bigger digital transformation firms. So Google, Facebook, all of these things will attract talent away from all businesses. The other one is tech enablement in general. So embracing the whole idea of technology being part of the solution is something that we all need to get our heads around. But how will we find the talent to facilitate that? Or even to use what we call sort of citizen systems. So using the things that are almost customized, almost ready for us to take them and implement them in our businesses. And even having that skill is a bit of a bridge to cross as well. The other things that we need to think about is new ways of recruiting. So today we still have this very traditional model of you hire someone in a permanent type of role, but we need to start thinking more flexibly about our employment pool. So thinking about how we embrace this gig economy and still make that work for our businesses. So I think this is an important consideration, which I'd love to hear your questions on. The other one I would say is around the whole idea of purpose. So we've moved and we've recognized that business can't just be for the shareholder, but there's a wider group of stakeholders impacted by what we do in our businesses. It's going to be more essential, as Diego already mentioned, to think more locally about how we grow businesses and how we expand our reach, etc., which is also a challenge. And how we think about shaping the future of our businesses, our mission message, to be able to attract both customers and employees to work with us. So I think these are core considerations. The other thing that I wanted to mention that maybe you're not aware of is that there are a lot of research pools now that are using work from the global south to come up with solutions for the global north. So sort of the rich countries versus countries that are developing. And the beauty of the countries that are developing is that they have long relationships of working with social enterprises to bring about solutions for those countries. And this is now being seen as the way forward for many big organizations as well as medium-sized organizations. So I saw something very interesting yesterday with IKEA doing a bit of research with a number of companies on how they have worked with social enterprises to bring about solutions, particularly in procurement. So they found ways for social enterprises to provide some sort of a service or product using the principles of society and what's of interest to society in order to provide those services. So these are things that are really starting to grow in the consciousness of businesses all around the world. And I think it's a useful thing for us to integrate into our thinking when we look at the strategy map for the future. So those are the sort of points that I wanted to share as an introduction.
Superb. Thank you, Catherine. And again, I encourage you to put any links you have into the chat function.
Sure.
Particularly intrigued about the global south and global north. From a personal perspective, that would be fascinating to explore. So thank you for that. Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Mark Wheatley. I work for an energy consultancy called Full Power Utilities. We've been going since 1997, and our focus is very much in the SME space. So we help SMEs with energy procurement, energy management, and in recent years, of course, there's been a shift towards energy efficiency, and more recently, the government's net zero targets. So today I'm coming from a very practical point of view, perhaps a very specific area as well. Just to give you a bit of info in terms of how we've been helping SMEs over the last 18 months or so start their journey to net zero. What we find pretty much 99% of the time when speaking to small business owners is that they want to do something, they want to start their journey to net zero, but they just don't know how to do it. And they're a little bit overwhelmed with the information out there. It all seems a bit daunting. And it also, in their mind, it's going to cost them a lot of money to start this and get things moving. In truth, that's not the case. It can be very simple. There are tools and software platforms, which I will go on to talk about, I'm sure, that are available to SMEs to help them record their carbon emissions, report their carbon emissions, and then reduce their carbon emissions. And at Full Power, we're there to onboard businesses, small business owners into this process and get them moving. So what we've done at Full Power over the last 18 months is we've partnered with an organisation called Future Net Zero, and they have developed a third-party carbon accounting process where they are helping small business owners to review their carbon data, make sure that it's accurate, and then put a stamp of accreditation on that to say, yep, these guys are reporting on their carbon emissions and everything they're doing is true and fair. And this is becoming more important for small business owners because there are various stakeholders now that are looking to small businesses and what they're doing with regards their carbon credentials. So, you know, Catherine just touched upon it in terms of attracting talent. So small businesses need to attract talent before they get swept up by the larger companies, as Catherine sort of hinted at there. And starting something as simple like recording your carbon emissions is showing the talent pool that you are taking action and you're doing something. So there's an area there. The second area is access to finance. So the high street banks, and we're working with a couple now, I can't say who, but we're working with them because they are now lending money to small businesses based on their carbon credentials. So are they taking action? And I think the days are gone now where businesses could say, yeah, we're doing something here, here's what we're doing, with no real sort of checking and proofing of that work. And we, through our partner at Future Net Zero, we offer the ability to have that the carbon reporting that the small businesses do accredited, and the banks are now looking to that to say, okay, we need that. So what we're going to find with small businesses is their access to finance is going to rely on the action they're taking. And They might not have access to certain financial products, or they'll have access to better rates for loans that they're taking out, and that's coming straight from the banks at the moment. And then finally, the other stakeholder, of course, is your customers. So just to give you a really quick example, we're helping a company that produces chicken feed, of all things, and they need to start their journey recording their carbon emissions because their customers are saying to them, right, we're bound by legislation now to report on this, and through our scope 3 emissions, we need to see what you're doing in terms of taking action. And if small businesses don't take action and they can't appease the needs of their customers, then they face the risk of losing those supply contracts. So it's a very real issue. I think that after COP26 at the beginning of November, we're going to see some more changes, more pressure coming down to the SMEs in the UK. And hopefully today I can explain a few practical solutions amongst the conversation to help those businesses.
Great, thank you, Mark. I will now turn to Dr. David Hutchinson. David.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name's David. I'm a reader in environmental innovation at the University of Portsmouth, but also director of GreenTech South. GreenTech South, if you don't know it, is a triple helix cluster that's been going for about 7 or 8 years, focused very much on the kind of central south region. We've got about 400 businesses that have joined us at no cost to work with each other and with us to try and more rapidly transition to when we started a low carbon economy. And obviously now, as Ross pointed out, you could use one of about 500 words to describe it, but essentially whatever you want to use, we've been doing it for a while. I think there's good news. I think that's the main message. So there's support out there for businesses, large and small, but also, recognizing that actually it's the SMEs and even within that subset, that large subset, the really small companies that form the majority of our economy and drive the economy, and so need that support. We're involved with 3 programs at the moment funded by UK government: Low Carbon Solent, Emphasize and Locase. Through those you can access a range of support, free energy efficiency audits, some energy efficiency grants, some innovation grants. So I think that's something that other businesses have access through us, and also as part of GreenTech South, we belong to a couple of other communities. We are founder members of Clean Growth UK, which is a national network which has joined us with another cluster in Brighton and one in Liverpool, and we're actively seeking other members, and there's about 2,000 businesses there, which is starting to get to sort of a significant critical mass where you can find support and help. But also we're part of the International Clean Tech Network, and that's over 16,000 SMEs across the globe, many of whom are innovating or coming up with new services or products to really rapidly help us transition to net zero. So greentechsouth.com is where you can find us online, and we're also at VentureFest on Thursday and the big sustainability expo at the end of the month for those that know about that. So come and find us and have a chat, but we've got members of the team that can work with you to find what the most appropriate step forward might be, whether that's accessing some of those grants and support that I've kind of already alluded to, or something else, access to student projects perhaps to start you off. I don't know. There is no one size fits all, but I think everybody can do something positive. And over the last 3 years, as part of Clean Growth UK, we can demonstrate not only growth, but income to businesses. Some great good news stories on our websites of how businesses have embraced clean growth either through innovation or through energy efficiency and managed to grow, save money, safeguard jobs. I think over 400 jobs safeguarded in the last 3 years, for example. So it's not kind of a set of scales. It's not that you have to give up one thing to take up something else necessarily. but it is finding the right route for the business. But I think we're grounded in trying to deliver net zero, and there's lots of businesses and business examples and individuals that we've worked with that can demonstrate that, I think. Thank you.
Great, thank you, David. Thank you, panel. There's a lot to get your head around with all of that, and trying to structure the conversation over the next 60 minutes or so. I'm going to suggest that we start with the tactical things, the very basic things that we can do, and moving up through the operational and the strategic emphasis of this topic. So the first question, and please keep your questions coming into the chat function before we get a sort of critical mass of those questions. One question for the panel, working at the sort of tactical level, what's one or two things that small businesses could do almost immediately to work towards the objective of clean growth and net zero? Catherine.
I would probably say this should be Mark's answer, because I would say switch your energy provider.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump in there. Thanks, Catherine. Yes, folks, the quickest and easiest thing a business can do is, if you're not already on supply with a green or renewable energy provider, switch that immediately or as soon as you can, whenever your contract ends, because that will have a fantastic impact on your carbon emissions. Just to give you an example, we recently helped a media company based in London. Just to give you a bit of context, the reason they got in contact with us is that they were applying for government tenders, so government contracts, and within those tender documents, they had to illustrate their carbon emissions and what action they were taking on that. Their energy supply, predominantly electricity, they didn't consume much gas, but the electricity consumption was quite vast amongst their operations, and they weren't on a renewable product. We moved them over, and immediately it took the equivalent of 120 cars off the road per year. So a huge impact immediately. And the good news is it didn't cost them any more money either. The days of green and renewable energy being more expensive are gone, they're behind us. I must admit the switch to renewable is probably causing us a few problems at the moment in the market. I'm sure many of you are hearing the state of the energy market at the moment, but we're on the right path with all of that, and more energy suppliers are now green or renewable as standards. So it is not a hard thing to do, and it can be done very, very quickly.
Mark, do you have any experience of the broking, energy brokers? Does that market exist for green energy?
Yes, absolutely. So effectively, that's one of our services. We help businesses find the most suitable product. I will quickly add that the cheapest is not always the most suitable. So to give you an idea, there are, it sounds a bit bizarre, but there are some suppliers which are greener than others, even though they would both supply 100% renewable electricity. So to give you a name, Ecotricity, who some of you may be aware of, I would consider them the greenest of the energy suppliers. They use sources, only sources of wind and solar, and in terms of their operations, their canteen is vegan and so on and so on. So they are probably the greenest of the suppliers. And then you have some energy suppliers which can market their energy supply as 100% renewable, but some of that will be offset through carbon offsetting and so on. So perhaps not quite as green as the likes of Ecotricity. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there, and depending on how much you want to focus on it, it does pay to have someone on your side helping you navigate the market.
Okay, thank you, Mark. David, from your perspective, a very practical action that our team could take.
Give us a call and see if one of the energy efficiency audits, which don't cost anything, might be suitable. Would be a very practical thing. I'd also say don't necessarily jump in and spend loads of cash straight away. Do stuff that doesn't cost you very much to start with. Just if you're completely new to this and not sure, because that one thing that's going to happen is we're going to get a whole bunch of people trying to fill a market, just as they did with solar panels, and not all those people are going to give you the right advice, or they're going to be pushing one product over another. So if it's going to cost you a load of money, then and you're not sure, then you could do. There's plenty of stuff you can do at low cost as well. I mean, if you've not switched to LEDs, then switch to LED light bulbs. Obviously, not everybody owns their property, so that we get that there's pressure there. But there's lobbying, just stuff that you do as individuals as well. Ask questions of your representatives, of your MPs. The region spends about, probably more now, but 5 years ago, it's about £4 billion on energy, most of which is outside of the region. So actually, why are we not, as a region, generating more renewables ourselves? Ask these questions, because we have the potential to do it. It's just that it hasn't been done yet. And actually, £4 billion spend into the region and into our local economy and with our local businesses is an enormous amount.
Yes.
So, and that's just talking to people. I know it's your time, but it doesn't cost you financially to just, as you're doing today. To be fair, I'm preaching to the converted, but yeah.
Great, thank you, David. And your link to Green Tech's in the chat. Diego, outside of energy, practical tips, practical things we can do.
Well, outside of the energy, I would say that one of the practical things to do is to look at your plastic, well, waste in general, but particularly the plastics that you use and the plastic waste that you have, and you start taking steps to improve the separation of the plastic. They may seem kind of not a particular challenge, but still there is more than 60% of small business who do not correctly separate their plastics from the waste. So that means that all their waste cannot be recycled. And then you can look at ways to actually reduce the use of plastics, so which also will help to reduce packaging or reduce cost on that. But I would say that, and this is not, it doesn't have particular cost, it's just creating a culture, for instance, of cleaning, washing plastic films before putting them in the recycling bin, because they will just contaminate the whole amount of plastic. And those are small actions that can be done, and that will certainly help the company to improve their sustainability impact. And then as more companies become used to that, you can move into more evolved initiatives like the City of Southend is doing here in the UK, to create places in which you can collect waste for several small business and then sell it and get an extra value that then you bring back to this business at través the special award systems. Or so there is a, but the first point is creating this culture that you need to recycle and you need to clean your waste, separate, and look, having a plastic strategy for your business.
Great, thank you, Diego. I'm sure that everyone on the call has got a good example of how their businesses are engaging with this topic. So I'll be really interested to see what those are on the chat.
I'd love to add something as well, Rob, if I can.
Yes, please do.
So I think one of the things, or one of the questions that came up, was around culture. And what I'd like to say as an easy step to take around culture is to start a conversation around something related in the social learning sphere. So there's loads of documentaries, for example, on Netflix or Amazon. If you as a leader decided to watch one of those and start a conversation about it in your organization, then you're already starting an important conversation with your teams in a way that it's easy for them to digest. So I would say, look at that sphere.
Yes, that's a good point, Catherine. It plays to Ross's question in the chat about engaging the whole of your organization in this topic. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so I think when you're thinking about making a change like this, the first thing is to understand how people react to change. And the vast majority of people are change averse. So the idea is to introduce these topics slowly. So start the conversation happening, make it comfortable for people to say what they're concerned about, to say what they fear. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of intersectionality of all of the things that we're facing at the moment, coming off the pandemic, people having worked from home and started on their digital transformation journey, so to speak. There are a lot of things that are happening at the same time, and that change has already uprooted people's comfort zones. So the idea is to create a safe space, a space of psychological safety where people can share what their concerns are, share what their thoughts are, facilitated. So make sure that you yourself have gone through the journey of having that emotional intelligence to deal with people's concerns, but facilitate that space where your employees can become part of the solution don't feel as if this has to be you only. They probably have solutions and ideas already. Many people have already taken steps in their own lives to do things differently. And it would be interesting just to learn what they're doing, right? So facilitate that kind of conversation. And then that starts getting them enrolled in whatever you want to do next.
Yes, that's a really good point, Catherine. That was something we'll pick up a bit later on, I'm sure. Let's look at the next level up on operational costs then, because one of the critiques of this is it's going to cost me a huge amount of money to go move to this green way of operating. If we have that as a sort of subtopic, what's the panel's view on costs and moving to net zero? Diego, what's your view on that? Operational costs, how we might reduce them?
It depends on the type of stage. I think there are normally what is called a first stage in moving towards a sustainable business, in which you can have actually savings because you become more efficient. So in terms of use of energy, which is not about using renewable energy, but using less energy, so being more energy saving, using less water or recycling your water, or using less virgin inputs. So there are a lot of areas in which people does not look. I will just give an example. For instance, a dentist. So companies making dentures, let's say, so you can use a lot of wax, and that wax can be totally recycled. But actually, only 20% of those companies recycle that. Most of them prefer to throw it away and to use virgin wax. So just because it's faster. So there is so there are efficiency gains in the first stage, but obviously moving further in the transition does require higher costs, and that's why there is support. There are several subsidies and grants that David has mentioned, because there is awareness that if you want to move further in sustainability and you had to do that, then you will be higher costs, and it's only fair that those costs are covered by the government or supported by the government.
Yes.
And there are a lot of examples of that kind of initiatives.
Thank you, Diego. David, it would be great if you could put some of those links. Maybe those links for funding are found on your website. But we as a business owner would definitely be interested in accessing some of that. Catherine, what are your thoughts on costs? We'll come to you, Mark.
Yeah, so for me, from a digital transformation point of view, I think that there's a lot of opportunity sitting within your organization that you can look at to unlock money for other things. So if you can do something to look at the automation of some of your processes, making them slicker, it frees up time of your resource, first of all, to allow them to do the learning they might need to do. It also gives you resource for other projects. So if you wanted to start innovative projects, you would have the resource capacity to do that. So I would say look within your organization as one of the places to source your funding.
Yes, that's a very good point. Mark.
Yeah, Catherine, I'll just follow on from that. So the very fact that we as a company are bringing this service to our clients is a result of my team automating certain processes, freeing up my time, which allow me to go and put this service in place and deliver to our clients. So yeah, I definitely champion that. Yes, one of the questions, of course, we get asked all the time is how much is this going to cost? And some sort of solutions, energy efficiency solutions, can be capital intensive, but there are options out there. So for example, if you are looking to have solar panels put on your roof, you can fund it yourself. You can arrange it on a lease agreement, for example, or there are investor options as well, where investors can come in, put the panels on your property roof, and then sell you electricity at a cheaper rate, which will save you money on your energy consumption. So there are options out there. Diego was absolutely right. In terms of energy, it's not just a case of switching to a green supply. It's definitely about reducing your consumption. So those small changes, which have been touched on, changing your lighting, making sure those halogen bulbs are no longer in your property, is a good starting point. But just to give you an idea in terms of some of the things we've done for our team at Full Power. So we've launched a company EV scheme, which I'm about to take advantage of. Little to no cost to the company. It gives me access to an electric vehicle at a much cheaper rate. Once the salary sacrifice scheme has been put in place, and that's actually encouraging our team to now take a step forward a lot quicker. So I'm the second person in our team to order an electric vehicle through the scheme. I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have done it yet had it not been for that, because it's saving me about £350, £400 a month going through the scheme. So I would certainly, as a business, look to that. That can have a very good impact. And look, it's motivational for your team as well. My fiance is going to be very happy when the new car arrives and she gets to drive it. So there are schemes out there that I would encourage businesses to look into, which are pretty low cost. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Okay, that's a very good point, Mark. David, is there anything that you'd like to add before we move to more strategic and come to our guests' questions?
I think it obviously depends on the context and what you value as a business. And if you are looking at it purely in economic terms, then it's just a case of what the return on investment would be and to work out whether that's acceptable or not. And there are products that have a reasonable ROI. There are those that take a lot longer to pay you back. And obviously there's more uncertainty as that goes on. If actually that you are able to take into account some of the environmental and social costs of your decision making, then that becomes a slightly different set of circumstances. I would, SMEs and their nature, and certainly the ones we work with, are incredibly innovative and not actually that renowned for being wasteful either, because you're trying to run a business and actually you end up being quite efficient as a result. So actually I would encourage that conversation with staff and just sort of see what you could do in terms of crowdsourcing solutions, because one thing's for sure, we haven't got all the answers, and actually even collectively it's going to be a struggle, and we've got about 10 years to do it. So even if you haven't then got the resource to carry out those potential solutions that you and your staff come up with, then that's the point where maybe talk about them or seek support or advice, and perhaps as a sort of a joint venture something could be taken forward. But there's tiny little companies. There's a great spin out from the University of Southampton, Absolar, and they're a couple of guys, I think Backer's on the call, but the couple of guys did and girls doing a PhD and stuff, and have spun out this company with some incredibly brilliant algorithms and things that I don't understand. But what they have is a product which I know Portsmouth City Council and I think Isle of Wight have embedded on their website. You can type in your postcode and it tells you straight away whether your roof is suitable for solar, how suitable it is, what the payback might be, what the options are for taking it up might be, and you can directly access a framework of suppliers, which is, Portsmouth City Council is a large organisation, has time and resource to work out, who the trusted suppliers might be, and so on and so forth. So it's a really nice little ecosystem, and that's just come from a really small company, and there's loads of examples like that. So I think actually it's as much about listening in to find the solutions, because they could well be coming out of the sorts of companies that we have assembled today. You just don't know. So I think that's something I would say.
Great, David, thank you.
If just can add to that
Yes,
about
Diego,
crowdsourcing, and that what David Chas has mentioned, and one of the things about bringing lessons from the south. In Africa, in West Africa, 60% of green products are funded through crowdsourcing or through using social networks, families, relatives, and friends. And this is so there are a lot of social media skills or networking skills that perhaps they are not so developed here, or we are not so used to that, but definitely, particularly for the smaller business and very small business, is a very interesting avenue to explore.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Diego. And it leads nicely onto the sort of strategic point about Catherine. Perhaps this is a question for you when we talk about the brand that sits behind your green credentials as a brand, and how that might serve your marketing strategy to secure new customers and but also attract new employees? Did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay, so there's a lot out there in terms of greenwashing. So we need to be mindful of that as well. I think when you're building a brand to be ethical, you need to certainly own up to where you are. So, you know, it's not just about the purpose and the journey that you're going toward. You need to be very, very open about where you are today. I mean, one of the ways to do that very simply is to go through one of these assessments, so for example, B Corps or other types of assessments, and share your score and share with people the things that are gaps in your process. Allow that scrutiny of people to see what you're doing. The other thing is to again crowdsource those solutions by saying, okay, this is a problem for us. Give us some recommendations, share with us some recommendations, ask your customers to get involved. And this really shows the kind of openness. The other thing is that recognize that there's a lot of complexity in this. So I did a post yesterday about this session, and I said that clean and growth for sustainability purists don't really go together, right? Because it's almost impossible to have limitless growth in a finite planet. So we need to take some sort of responsibility for the fact that potentially this isn't possible. And as we start looking at this from a global perspective, that really starts to make sense. If we're competing nation states, then sure, we can grow, but at what cost? Yes. Right. So this is where the conversation about the donut economics comes in. I mean, we've all gone through, I mean, well, I can't speak for you guys, but I've certainly gone through school on economics that taught me very different things from life inside of a donut. The way that Kate Raywood talks about it. It's a very good book, and she has a very good TED talk as well, if you want to understand about donut economics. But it talks about boundaried leadership. So considering that there are 9 planetary limits that we shouldn't exceed. And of course, you as a small business are not responsible for that in its entirety, but you're responsible to take as much action as possible, not to cross those limits, to get to net zero where possible. And then there's the sort of the floor that you can't go beneath, which is where all the social issues are happening and all the issues related to climate change are happening. So I would look at how you can, one of the important things there is also about fair contracts with your suppliers, with your teams as well as your suppliers, and making sure that what you're paying, what you're putting into that pot is actually something that these people can survive on, can grow their businesses on, can achieve a level of a basic minimum level of wealth. And that's part of the big conversation. There's so much intersectionality at the moment. I mean, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. All of them, it's not necessarily the perfect set of things because all of them have some challenges. One of the ones that I work with in particular is goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And it is a contradiction in itself. So looking at how you explore these topics in your strategy set and deciding which things you're going to tackle first, because this is the pragmatic side of this. We will never be able to solve all the problems. So start with acknowledging them and then build a roadmap to see how you get to where you need to be.
Yes, that's very sound advice, Catherine. Diego, did you want to pick up where Catherine left off, and particularly looking at supply chains and for your business?
There's several, I don't know about supply chains, but I want to point out that greenwashing is less of a concern because it has been, greenwashing only works for companies who want to have like a life cycle of a couple of years, because it has been, it is clear by now that customers are aware of the possibility of greenwashing, so they don't take the claims of companies at face value, and actually they watch more intensely companies that claim to be green. And when those companies are not able to actually provide evidence that they are green, the backlash that produces affects the brand much more than the benefit they could obtain for potential greenwashing. So companies accept that you are extremely big multinational and you are able to maintain a structure to compensate your lack of environmental performance with other compensatory actions, for small and medium companies, it's impossible for greenwashing to be a successful strategy. It is just, it is, you know, there are a lot of evidence showing that. So I wouldn't, at this stage, I wouldn't be less worried about greenwashing.
Okay.
And then, yes, I don't know. I think that's what I wanted to highlight. And,
Thank you, Diego. And Mark, what's your experiences of, or from a marketing strategic perspective, do they see this when they engage your services? Is it part of their strategic reinvention or strategic plan to demonstrate their green credentials? How is it from your experience?
Actually, from our experience, the PR sort of side of things, it hasn't been that much of a priority. It's actually been where businesses, SMEs have been, unfortunately at this stage, forced into taking action. Actually, do you know what, that's unfair. We have had a couple of clients who wanted to do this just because it's the right thing. So as an example, we got a client that's a small family run printing shop, digital printing shop on an industrial park. And they saw some of our sort of marketing about this service, helping businesses to record their carbon emissions. And they contacted us and wanted to get on board just because it was a personal want, it's a personal desire that they wanted to start this. I would say that outside of that, predominantly it's SMEs that are tendering for certain contracts where they've had to prove their credentials, or as I say, where their customers are pushing the message down the chain and saying, you're part of our scope 3 emissions, we need you to take action, therefore you need to prove it to us. So we haven't actually seen much of it from a marketing standpoint, actually. Yeah, as I say, it's mainly practical that I would say that the businesses are approaching us and asking for help.
Okay, Mark, thank you for that. David, anything to add to that discussion?
A couple of things. One, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning, I work at the University of Portsmouth, you know, big employer in Portsmouth. As a large organisation, we've taken the decision not to be net zero, but to go further and be climate positive by 2030. We'll be honest, we don't know how we're going to do it yet, but we feel as a very large organisation in the region, we should be aiming for that. So we should be looking to do stuff that's effectively taking carbon out of the atmosphere by the time we get there, not just being net zero. That's obviously, you know, for small organizations that might not be an option, but I think some of the large organizations need to take that responsibility, which we are doing, but it's going to be an interesting road to see how we get there. In terms of then the whole kind of cyclical thing, so clean growth, it depends how you define growth, but in the traditional terms, I agree, you know, you can't just go linear. But we have some incredible talent within the region. We have the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on our doorstep, and you know, the stuff that they're doing around circular economy and closed loop manufacture is literally world leading. And if you don't know about them, then just, you know, they're very accessible. Go and get some, if nothing else, inspiration from some of the brilliant case studies, many of whom are innovative SMEs. But at a regional level, you know, because of COVID, there has been an opportunity, and there are some of us that are working on behalf of business alongside local government and academia. And we've developed this thing called Greenprint, which has been adopted by all the local authorities and is being pursued and developed by local authorities and in collaboration with other sectors. But the idea is to try and get to a set of measures for a kind of more post-COVID green recovery that isn't just about economic development. So it is looking at that kind of balanced scorecard approach that Kate Raworth's Donut Economics brings, or some of the Ellen MacArthur measures. So that is going on in the region, and I think, you know, there's opportunity to engage with that should people wish. It is being developed, but the positive is there's a real appetite for that, and both elected members and chief executives of all of the local councils have engaged and are engaging with that, and have put a small amount of money in to develop it further. and are keen to see that realised in our region because of the set of circumstances we're in. We have a fairly strong economy, but we also have incredible natural environments. And actually, there's a lot of people now interested in the idea of when they do have to offset, and offsetting will be part of our toolbox to start with, certainly, but it's not, we've got to do the other stuff first. It is important that we are efficient and we look to save where we can. But when we do have to offset, there's a lot of people interested in sort of local offsetting. So can we enhance and protect our local environment at the same time? And there's a lot of that stuff going on around some of the oyster beds, the kelp beds. And so there's a lot in the blue environment. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust are doing some really interesting stuff around rewilding farms. And trying to attack that whole nitrate thing. So it is about that systems level, big picture stuff, and we're all a part of that. And it's really easy sometimes to go from denial to despair because it all seems so complicated. But I think as a region, there's stuff going on that's really exciting and gives us an opportunity to engage at the regional level. So I guess act locally, think globally type stuff. But we'll have, we'll set the scene and provide some leadership on a national and international level.
Okay, David, thank you for that insight. I'm going to turn to the floor now, and I want to get the perspective from a bank and how they approach lending to small, medium-sized enterprises. How important is the green credentials for your rationale in lending? Mairead, I'm going to pick on you, if I may.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much, everybody. Really enjoyed that. So I think, like everything, we're evolving. So we have now just started to make it mandatory that we comment on every business's transition plans as part of an assessment process. And the idea of that is to help and support rather than to judge and mark, if that makes sense. But it is then to be able to help to connect them, introduce them to people that might be able to help them and share what other businesses are doing, so to share best practice. But it is a mandatory discussion that we now have to have. We are working on a variety of different things. Some are now released, so climate impact assessments, working with Microsoft on cut the carbon tools to help people measure where they are, Geeky Pro, sorry. So there's a number of things working on. Our green finance for the SMEs, we are working on a loan. It will be kept very simple, but it will be about use of proceeds, and then there will be beneficial rates for encouraging people to sort of take action and be able to do things to reduce the carbon in their businesses. I don't know if there's, Simon, anything you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, more than happy to. I think sort of Mairead conveys, we're spending a lot of our time having discussions with our clients around this topic and trying to help. And that help comes from some of the products and development things that we're doing. And obviously, as a business, we've invested a lot to get our own house in order to start off with and set some really sort of strong commitments from our side. But to build on some of the tools that we're sort of developing out for our clients, we've developed an app that will help people measure what type of EV will be the best EV for them. So you can download the app and it will track your journeys and help with recommendations. And that can be given to employees to help them with their choices around EVs. We've got funding solutions specifically for electric vehicles, not to cross over what someone Mark does, but we're developing almost a price comparison site tool for energy, because energy, swapping your energy is one of the best things that can be done for a business to sort of make a difference quickly. We've got some partnerships with Octopus Energy around putting charging solutions into our customers' business premises. What else? And then going for, I suppose, an education piece. So we touched on sort of staff and education. Both Mairead and I are very fortunate enough to go on. We went on an Edinburgh University course last year, around climate change and sustainability, and we're both studying to do a green finance qualification at the moment. So it's something that all of our staff are having to go through an education program internally to be able to help them and help our clients transition. Really.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Marie. You better declare the organisation that you both work for.
NatWest.
NatWest. So I think that the points to take from that are that, you know, the fact we're all here demonstrates our commitment to learning more about this topic, but, you know, strategic financial investment decisions and lending are being driven in part by the green principles, and rightly so. So the days of ignoring them are long gone. Let's turn back to Catherine, because I was struck by one of the things that you said, Catherine, about how do you invite or engage your organization, no matter how large or small, into this generating possible solutions, and how you can do some very practical things tomorrow to move towards that goal. What are your thoughts on engaging people?
Yeah, so I think linked to my answer on the marketing topic, I would say vulnerability from leadership to say, I don't know everything. Contribute, let me know. You know, I think there is a move and a shift now from sort of the inspirational leader who comes with all the answers to the facilitative leader who allows for solutions to come from within their team. So I think putting yourself in that position to be vulnerable with your team is a starting point. And it's a place where I think people will connect with. I think people will emotionally connect with a stance that you take that says, help me find solutions. Beyond that, you know, I just want to touch on a couple of things that went before. So on the topic of greenwashing, and linked to David's comment about drawdown, carbon drawdown and offset, you know, there's lots of, you're going to hear lots of noise in the media about whether or not offsetting is good practice or not good practice. The fact is, it is good practice for where we are now. So if there is a company that is facilitating this drawdown and has a huge net positive effect, it is part of the solution today to support that company to scale and to grow. So for example, one of my clients, the company is Carbon Capture, and they've just started putting farms in the water in an area near Scotland, for example. And they need funding, and their funding partner just pulled out. So when these things happen, you think, what's wrong? What's really wrong with how we're making investment decisions today? So offsetting is a viable option until we have figured out how to transition our businesses. So if you want to take one action today, it could be support an offsetter. Beyond that, in terms of the leadership journey, what I think we need to do is be pragmatic and practical about where we're going to go. We will not solve everything today, but start where you can start and put a roadmap in place and put a team in place to track that and to be energized by that. The comms will be important because, as I mentioned before, it's like there is a sense that people need to be taken slowly along a journey. For some people probably sitting in the boardroom want to go now. But you need to take people along a certain journey, and you need to develop the comms plans to manage that as you go, to share the progress, to share the failures. The other thing is that culture around innovation. I think that the best innovations take time, they take failures. It takes a journey of going through things, and you need to be able to have capacity for that to happen. So find the ways to create that capacity, both from what you're doing with sort of the things that are efficient already, make them even more efficient, automate them, but free up time for the things that are less efficient, for the things that are emergent. Those things are going to need more time. They're simply going to need more resource and a little bit more care and hand-holding. So make sure that you understand what in your organization is sort of efficient already or ready to execute efficiently, the things that can be automated easily and the things that really need more investment. I think I'll stop there.
Okay, Catherine, that's very good. Mark, what's again your experience of organisations that have? You typically deal with the founders and the directors, or do you have the opportunity to work with the whole organisation in your work? And how does that play
So
out?
again, depending on the size of the business that we're talking with, the task of tackling the recording of carbon emissions and reducing those normally falls to an individual, be it the business owner or someone that's been allocated to do that. It's strange. Sometimes some businesses are forced to do it, as I've mentioned before, because they're having pressure put on by their customers, and we end up working with someone that perhaps has been put into this position unwantingly. So they really don't know what they're doing. So just an example, we're working with a business who has employed their health and safety officer to tackle the climate change issues, which we find a bit bewildering, but it's just an opportunity to educate that individual and put their hand through the process. We haven't really worked with many businesses at this stage where they've put a team in place to really tackle it. It's very low level stuff in terms of the businesses we're working with at the moment. It's just getting started. As has been mentioned by a couple of panelists today, you need to know where you are now in order to take action, of course. So to reduce your carbon emissions, you need to know where you currently are. And so for the first 12 months, essentially, unless you want to look at your baseline data for the previous 12 months, it's just about recording your business activities accurately, the mileage you're doing, the energy you're consuming. And if that business wants to go to the scope 3 emissions, I mean, that's a whole different area, which is quite complicated, and there doesn't seem to be an agreed set of principles on what is and what isn't scope 3 emissions. But it's just about getting started, knowing where you are now. And as I say, we haven't yet worked with a business where they've put money into a team to really tackle this. It's pretty low level stuff, but it's a start.
Would your advice be that you identify a person or a team that are responsible for driving the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. For this to be done properly, as Catherine said earlier, if you can free up resource, we're not saying go out and employ somebody and take on additional human resource costs. If you can sort of automate certain areas of your business, free up someone's time and move them into that position, I think you'll get buying, because that person's going to want to own that project. They're going to want to make it a success. So yes, absolutely. I'd say you need to make it someone's challenge, objective, and get them focusing on it, rather than, in that example I used, pushing your health and safety officer to do it because you need to. You're never going to get full commitment from it if you're going to go down that route.
Okay, Mark. Well, David, perhaps this is a question for you. With working with those 400 different organisations that are members of the Green Tech South, is there one sort of model organisation or an organisation that provides the model for a roadmap that Catherine talked about to help them take those steps towards becoming net zero and becoming a far more greener organisation, sustainable organisation?
No. Sure.
No.
I think the problem is there's no one size fits all. I mean, it depends how deep you want to go. There's different levels. I mean, the whole kind of there are different levels. There are good places, but actually if you've not started, then they get quite detailed quite quickly. The government has developed a support package for SMEs as part of COP. That's not bad to start with. I'll try and find a link and post it unless somebody else has got it.
Yes.
But that's quite a good place to start. And then I think the important thing is that there will be failures. There's a couple of examples in the chat of people saying, this has happened, and we are going to fail at some of this stuff, and things are going to go badly in some cases, and it's not necessarily our culture to draw attention to that. But I think in this case we need to be open and honest and transparent, and talk about failures as much as we do successes, but share those so that we can move forward together. But we will get it wrong. There will be local councils that get it wrong. And it's very easy to pick holes and say, oh yeah, should you be buying electric cars? And then you go down the route of, well, look at all the resources it takes to make it. It's early days for a lot of this stuff, and it's gonna, well, we've got to do it more quickly, but it will take a few years, certainly, even if we're all pulling in the same direction. I think what I draw inspiration from is the lots and lots of examples of innovation and commitment from our kind of innovation ecosystem and ecosystem of SMEs that we work with. And I think it's that collective value added that's raising the level. It isn't just one organisation, but at the moment, because government and presidency have COP, they are producing some interesting and helpful resource and putting pressure on local authorities and all the rest of it to make sure they look quite good. What I want to know is, and what we need to pay attention to is what happens post COP, and make sure that we don't just fall off an edge and they go, oh, all right, we've done that now, moving on. So, and that actually there's, we take that legacy and move it forward.
Yeah, I just want to add something to what David has said about the resources for EVs, etc., because that is also a topic of conversation. But I would say take some inspiration from the Global South. We've talked about it already, how some solutions are being leapfrogged because they can't go through the same journey that the West went through to develop. And we need to start thinking like that too. So some steps we need to consider that we leapfrog and we go to a more ideal state quicker. But it's again, with working with your councils, working with the solutions that the government are providing to see what makes sense for your organization at this point in time.
Great. Thank you for that, Catherine. For both of you, it'd be great to put those links, David, that link to the SME support package would be very handy. And Catherine, the podcast or the references to the Global South and North, I thought there was something.
Yeah, I've put 3 links in to the chat already. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, well, let's, we had a number of questions before the session, some of which I think we've answered. We had one very specific one on ecotourism. I don't know if anyone that raised that would like to pose that question to the panel. If not, I can ask it for you. So somebody asked a question around any advice, particularly for ecotourism businesses, entrepreneurs, on how to best approach communications with customers around sustainability. So this plays with perhaps the marketing and the communications point that we talked about. Any of you'd like to pick that up from the panel?
I would say that probably offsetting is going to be your angle here, because we have not yet come up with a commercially viable electric plane. Sorry, they are working on it. There's a lot of companies working on it, but it's not yet viable. So offsetting is going to have to be part of your solution, and working with the partners that you have in the various countries to make sure that they're committed to lowering their footprint as well. So if you're partnering with certain hotels, what are their policies? And communicate that to your customers as well.
Yes. I read something on a related website about funding for cargo bikes and e-bikes. And if it was an ecotourism business, for example, in the New Forest, that'd be something that perhaps you could access. Imagine that might be something, David, that's referenced in your link to support for SMEs. I don't know, but perhaps there is something in that. We had a question on innovation and sustainability, which I think we've covered. Financial support, links to funding. I think there are links in the chat for that. Correct me if I'm wrong. We've got roughly 5 minutes left. If anyone has any outstanding question or would like to make a point, then please address it to the panel. Floor is yours. If you'd like to.
I'll ask a question if that's okay, Rob. Just referring back to Diego and your point earlier with regards to the skills and education gap. And is this something that employers should be looking to help fill as such and play a part in?
Diego?
Yes, I think it's important that all organization has somebody that is a sustainability champion for the company and has that skills and is able to enroll more people in the organization on the issues of sustainability. That could be with a position, an appointed environmental manager. That could be with just employees who have this drive to achieve social issues. Or the ideal situation is this is at the CEO or the owner of the company, particularly for small companies. Change really happens when the CEO is committed that it will. I mean, in small companies, the CEO is king. So, but if as far as there is somebody in the company that is entrusted with that is not just appointed in a position to have some activities related with corporate social responsibility, which never become part of the core of the company, and the company continues doing the things that harm the environment, then anybody in the organization that is entrusted with that role is useful. But it has to be integrated. It has to be part of the strategy. And companies need to understand first where they make harm. I would, if you continue doing harm in the areas, for instance, if you're a polluting company and you continue polluting, it doesn't really help that you are doing good in other areas. You have to start for avoiding harm. And that's, in that sense, it's something that we need to understand that, and we need to communicate inside the company.
Yes. Okay, Diego. A good point. Very well made. I've got a couple of points. One from Rob here on the panel chat. Current support options for innovative businesses, financial. So, David, there were some links perhaps to the HMG support packages. Would that cover that question? That'd be your recommendation, first call for that?
Yeah, one place to start, certainly.
Yes. I'd imagine, Mairead, Simon, there are funding options, more commercial funding options with people like the National Westminster.
But both from NatWest, from the sort of main bank, and all Lombard. So Lombard do a lot of our asset finance solutions, and they've got some products specifically developed to support businesses on their green transition journey.
Yeah,
can I add something that the Faculty of Business Law has a course that is led by Peter Wonrit, one lecturer, and they have is a business consultancy for organizations, small organizations. So, and they are very keen on helping companies to address issues related to developing green products or understanding their sustainability needs or challenges. So they work with teams of students who work for a year with a company to try to understand and provide practical solutions. And it's a very successful program. So I put there the contact of the lecturer, Peter Wonrit, which is a really committed person, like a lot of drive. So if you are a very small business, or not necessarily, but that's a free of cost option that you could, every year he works with around 100 companies. So
that's great, Diego. That's exactly the sort of practical next steps that we need. So
just to say, for ease and for fairness, we're talking as well to the other universities because Southampton do something similar as well. But there is on the links I've already posted that there is a bit about student projects, and actually if anyone's kind of filled in an interest, it goes to Peter, it goes to others to try and kind of make sure that we find the best deal for the right SME, so to speak. But yeah, I completely echo that it's a brilliant thing, and we're trying to really lift it so that we can make sure it's coordinated and connected. And there is a health warning that comes with student projects, but on the whole, they can be, very beneficial, and if we get the right circumstances, then they can be kind of beneficial to both sides without too much money having to change hands. So that's always good as well.
Great. Thank you, David. Well, with one eye on the time, no final questions, I'm going to hand you back over to Ross to some closing comments.
Maybe I can just say one more thing, just to add. I think when you're approaching this and looking at this strategically for the long term, remember that some things will need to be sub-optimized for the whole to work. So you're going to have to be prepared to accept some sub-optimization in some of your goals in order to achieve the greater big picture that you want.
That's a good point.
No free lunch.
Yeah.
Ross.
Thanks so much, Rob. Thanks, Catherine. I 100% agree with that. There's no doubt that SME businesses in particular are going to have to make some decisions about the culture of their organisations, that they want to move forward with making the changes that are so essential. This is not as has been really discussed over the weekend so much from all parties. This is not something that is going to be taking place between now and 2050. There is a window now where we all need to be doing something over the next 10 years. And if it really means doing something over the next 10 years, it means it started 10 years ago. Simply, the fact is that we've got a lot of catching up to do. And I think some of the observations today were right, that we do have to leapfrog some of those steps and start from the culture of imposing a picture, a vision, an ethos for our company that we embrace as leaders, that we embrace as those driving our businesses forward, but that we liberate and we empower everybody in our organization to be part of that solution. And I do know there is not, I think it's for the next generation, and it is genuinely wired in. There is no doubt that when you are employing anybody under a certain age, and I won't say what that is in this assembled company, particularly with me sitting here, that under a certain age, there is no doubt that it comes wired in, that there is an expectation that they are choosing the companies they work for based upon culture, based upon ethos. And you can do yourself a massive service by ensuring that you place, I think, all matters, all 500 matters relating to sustainability at the heart and the center of your organization. And you'll be attracting a talent pool from the next generation that will be helping you to get there. But with this particular thing, ensure that you liberate that, free that up, and let them be the driving force and let them be part of that solution. But don't become a roadblock for any of it. Really do recognize that people are making choices in the supply chain, making choices within business across the globe based upon these values. And we're just helping you to achieve that. Now, the Chamber of Commerce cannot be the answer to this, but we can provide a forum. And thank you so much for participating in this. But what we would like is the tens of businesses to become the hundreds and the thousands of businesses. So please do spread the word. Do get yourself involved, if you're not already, directly in our Green Innovation Group, but also encourage others to come to the Chamber and ask us to be part of that solution for them, because that's what we want to be. How that shapes itself and where that takes us will be a journey we'll be sharing together. But absolutely, we are right there with you, and it's a priority for us as an organization. So demand things and we will ensure that they are delivered. Thank you so much for such a brilliant session. Please remember, I've put in the chat that there is another Chamber of Solutions coming up, I think on the 9th of November. Please book onto that. We want to see you there and spread the word to others. Thank you so much. Rob.
Thank you, Ross, and thank you everyone for attending. I hope you got something from it. You can save the chat if you are not familiar with how to do that. Click on the three buttons at the end, dots at the bottom of the chat, and you'll be able to save that chat to your local PC or Mac with all of the links on there. So that's available. We'll leave that open for a few more seconds if you wanted to do that. I have just done that. Some great links. Hope to see you all again soon in early November, and as Ross said, spread the word about the Chamber of Solutions and the series. So wish you the very best. Have a good rest of the week and see you again very soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers, Rob.
Bye.
Very much.